The Last Hope Transmission. The message that would change humanity's place in the galaxy arrived during the graveyard shift at the Deep Space Listening Array in New Mexico. Dr. Elena Santos had been half asleep in her chair, surrounded by humming quantum processors and holographic displays, when the transmission cut through the usual background noise of cosmic radiation. At first, she thought it was an equipment malfunction. The signal was too clean, too precise for the typical garbled messages they received from Earth's distant colonies. But as the quantum-encrypted data began resolving itself across her screens, her hands started shaking. "This is High Commander Nixus of the Arcturus Alliance," the message began, transmitted in perfect universal standard. "To any civilization receiving this transmission, we are facing extinction. The Void Dominion has already consumed 3 of our core worlds. Our most advanced defensive systems have failed. Our allies have abandoned us. If anyone receives this, if anyone can help, we have nowhere else to turn." Within hours, the United Earth Defense Council had convened an emergency session. The holographic chamber beneath Geneva buzzed with tension as representatives from every major spacefaring nation debated the implications. The Arcturus Alliance was legendary, one of the oldest civilizations in the known galaxy, masters of antimatter technology and quantum engineering, and they were asking for help from Earth, a species that had barely begun reaching for the stars. Admiral James Way stood before the assembled council, his weathered face illuminated by the soft blue glow of tactical displays. "The situation is unprecedented," he began, his voice steady despite the gravity of the moment. "The Arcturus Alliance has technology centuries beyond our own. Their quantum drives make our best ships look like steam engines, but they're desperate enough to ask us for help. What exactly could we offer them?" The Chinese representative's skepticism cut through the chamber. "Our most advanced battle groups are tied up containing the pirate raids in the Proxima sector. What's left wouldn't stand a chance against an enemy that can overwhelm Arcturian defenses." Admiral Wai's slight smile caught everyone off guard. "That's exactly why we might be able to help." He gestured, and a new hologram materialized, a massive spacecraft graveyard orbiting Earth's moon. "The Void Dominion expects quantum weaponry, antimatter cannons, temporal shields. But sometimes the old ways are the most unexpected." The images shifted, showing rows of mothballed warships. They weren't pretty. Their hulls bore the scars of decades of service. Their designs belonged to an era before humanity had mastered quantum technology. But they were sturdy, reliable, and most importantly, they were built to fight dirty. "The Vanguard Reserve Fleet," White continued. "Over 50 capital ships, 300 support vessels, all considered obsolete by modern standards. Railguns instead of particle beams. Tungsten rods instead of antimatter torpedoes. Analog backup systems that can't be hacked by quantum intrusion." He paused, letting the implications sink in. Sometimes the best sword is the one your enemy has forgotten how to defend against. The council chamber erupted in overlapping conversations. The Russian representative was already calling for volunteer crews from their veteran space forces. The European Union's military coordinator was running calculations on how quickly the old ships could be reactivated. But it was the Indian representative who voiced what everyone was thinking. "This is insane. We'd be sending our people on a suicide mission with outdated equipment against an enemy that terrifies even the Arcturians." Admiral Wai's response was quiet but carried to every corner of the chamber. "When humanity first reached for the stars, we didn't have quantum drives or antimatter weapons. We had courage, ingenuity, and the stubborn refusal to accept impossible odds. Perhaps that's exactly what the galaxy needs right now." The final vote was closer than anyone expected. But as the council dispersed, emergency alerts were already going out across Earth. In orbital shipyards, lights began coming on in vessels long thought obsolete. In retirement communities and civilian sectors, decorated veterans found themselves reading reactivation notices. Humanity was going to war with museum pieces against one of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. Dr. Santos watched from her station as the first ships began powering up, their ancient fusion drives painting the night sky with familiar fire. The Arcturian message continued playing on a loop, a reminder of what was at stake. She didn't know if humanity's obsolete fleet stood a chance. But as she watched more and more lights appear in orbit, she remembered something her grandfather used to say about humanity's greatest strength. It wasn't our technology or our weapons, but our absolute refusal to abandon those in need. The old ships were awakening, and with them, humanity's chance to prove itself among the stars. They might not have the most advanced technology, but they had something that couldn't be measured in quantum calculations or antimatter yields, the unshakable determination that had carried their species from stone tools to the stars. The last hope transmission had been received, and humanity's answer would echo across the galaxy. Operation Rust and Thunder. Captain Sarah Chen stood in the massive hangar bay of the Lunar Reactivation Facility, staring up at her new command. The U.S. Endeavour loomed above her, its battle-scarred hull telling stories of conflicts long past. 30 years ago, this ship had been the pride of Earth's fleet. Now it was considered a relic, barely worth maintaining in orbital storage. But as Sarah ran her hand along the cold metal of the hull, she felt something the quantum computers and probability engines couldn't measure: potential. "She's not much to look at anymore," a gravelly voice called from behind her. Sarah turned to find Chief Engineer Marcus Rodriguez, his gray hair and weathered face marking him as one of the reactivated veterans called back to service. "But the old girl's got good bones. We've spent the last week waking her up." Sarah nodded, following Marcus through the labyrinth of corridors. The ship still used physical switches and manual controls instead of neural interfaces. Analog gauges showed reactor output rather than holographic displays. Everything felt solid, tangible, real. "How's the weapons systems?" Marcus's smile was fierce. "That's where it gets interesting. The main railguns can still accelerate a tungsten rod to 30% light speed. No fancy quantum shields in the galaxy can predict or deflect simple kinetic energy at that velocity. And wait until you see what we've done with the missile bays." The retrofit was happening across the entire reserve fleet. Ships that had been destined for museums were being dragged back into service, their outdated systems turned into unexpected advantages. Traditional electronic warfare suites couldn't hack hydraulic backup systems. Atomic sensors calibrated for quantum signatures would have trouble detecting cold-forged steel projectiles. Sometimes the best countermeasure was no countermeasure at all. In the command center overlooking the facility, Admiral Wei was coordinating the largest reactivation of mothballed ships in human history. "The Void Dominion expects advanced technology," he explained to the assembled captains. "Their entire strategy revolves around overwhelming quantum defenses and subverting AI control systems. They've never faced an enemy that still relies on human reflexes and mechanical computing." The tactical displays showed the scope of Operation Rust and Thunder. 50 capital ships, 300 support vessels, all built before humanity's quantum revolution. The crews were a mix of recalled veterans and young volunteers, experience combined with raw determination. They had 3 weeks to train together before the fleet departed for Arcturus space. Sarah spent those weeks drilling her crew relentlessly. The young officers had to learn to trust their instincts over computer predictions. The veterans had to shake off years of rust, while remembering skills many thought they'd never need again. But something extraordinary was happening. The crews were bonding with their ships in a way modern neural interfaces couldn't replicate. "It's like learning to dance again," Lieutenant Maria Wong remarked during a gunnery drill. Her hands flew over the manual fire control station, coordinating the massive railguns through pure muscle memory. "These old systems, they have personality. You have to work with them, not just command them." 2 weeks into training, they received another transmission from Arcturus space. The Void Dominion had taken 2 more systems. The Arcturian quantum defenses, once thought impenetrable, were failing against an enemy that seemed to understand and counter their every technological advantage. Time was running out. The night before launch, Sarah stood in Endeavour's observation deck, watching the Earth shine below. The ship hummed around her, not with the silent efficiency of quantum drives, but with the deep mechanical heartbeat of fusion reactors and spinning gyroscopes. Her crew had transformed the old warship from a museum piece into something else, a weapon that didn't rely on probability clouds or quantum uncertainty, but on human skill and unwavering determination. Captain to the bridge. The intercom crackled with actual static, another reminder of the ship's age. But as Sarah made her way through the corridors, returning the salutes of her crew, she felt a growing certainty. The Void Dominion expected to face desperate allies armed with familiar technology. Instead, they would encounter something their quantum predictions couldn't account for: humanity's talent for turning obsolescence into opportunity. The launch countdown began at dawn. Across Earth orbit, ancient engines flared to life. Ships that had been destined for destruction now carry humanity's answer to the Arcturian plea. They weren't the most advanced fleet in the galaxy. They weren't even the most advanced fleet humanity could field. But as the Armada set course for their first jump point, Sarah remembered something her academy instructor once said: "The most dangerous warrior isn't the one with the best weapon, but the one who knows how to turn any weapon into their best chance for victory." Operation Rust and Thunder was underway. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its technology, but in its ability to find victory in the most unexpected places. Old dogs, new tricks. The first sign that humanity's obsolete technology might actually be an advantage came during an unexpected encounter in the Procyon sector. The Endeavour's radar officer, using actual radio waves instead of quantum scanning, detected something that shouldn't have been there: a Void Dominion scout ship hiding in the shadow of a comet. "They're not registering us," Lieutenant Wong whispered, her eyes fixed on the mechanical displays. "Their quantum sensors are calibrated for energy signatures from modern ships. We're practically invisible to them." Captain Chen watched the alien vessel through actual cameras, another primitive technology that proved surprisingly effective. The scout ship was beautiful in a terrifying way, its crystalline hull designed to manipulate quantum fields. It was probably capable of destroying a modern Earth vessel in seconds, but it wasn't detecting the approaching human fleet at all. "All ships, maintain emission silence," Shen ordered through the old-fashioned radio channels. "Lieutenant Wong, plot me a ballistic course using Newtonian physics only. No quantum drives. Chief Rodriguez, I want a solution for the main gun using only mechanical calculators." The crew worked with practiced precision, using slide rules and physical computing machines that hadn't seen service in decades. The Void Dominion relied on quantum predictive algorithms to anticipate enemy actions. But there was nothing to predict here, just classical physics and human intuition. The tungsten rod fired from Endeavour's main railgun was barely detectable against the background radiation of space. It was simply a piece of metal, accelerated to relativistic speeds by electromagnetic forces. The scout ship's quantum shields, designed to deflect energy weapons and antimatter torpedoes, didn't even register the threat until impact. The destruction of the scout ship proved what Admiral Wei had theorized. Sometimes the old ways were the best ways. The human fleet had stumbled upon a critical advantage. Their primitive technology made them nearly invisible to the Void Dominion's advanced detection systems. Over the next week, the fleet refined their tactics. They learned to use solar radiation and planetary magnetic fields to mask their approach. The older ship's robust hulls could survive maneuvers that would tear apart more advanced vessels. Every limitation of their outdated technology became a potential advantage. "It's like bringing a knife to a quantum gunfight," Chief Rodriguez explained during a tactical briefing. Except the gunfighters so focused on defending against exotic energy weapons that they've forgotten how to stop a simple blade. The fleet's first major engagement came at the edge of Arcturus space. 3 Void Dominion cruisers were attacking the civilian transport convoy. The human ships approached under complete emission silence, using only momentum and gravity to maneuver. Their first salvo, Simple metal projectiles accelerated to relativistic speeds, struck before the enemy's quantum prediction engines could even register their presence. The battle that followed was unlike anything in modern space combat doctrine. The human ships fought like their ancient wet Navy counterparts, using terrain and positioning instead of quantum fields and probability waves. They launched clouds of simple metal chaff that played havoc with the enemy's sophisticated sensors. Their electronic warfare specialists used basic radio signals to overwhelm quantum communication networks. They'd forgotten the fundamentals, Admiral Wei observed as reports came in. They're so reliant on predictive algorithms and quantum shields that they don't know how to handle threats their computers can't model. But the real breakthrough came from an unlikely source, the fleet's maintenance crews. They discovered that the mechanical systems used in the older ships were naturally resistant to the quantum field manipulation that the Void Dominion used to disable enemy vessels. You couldn't hack a hydraulic system with a quantum computer. You couldn't disable manual controls with probability manipulation. The fleet's medical officers contributed another crucial observation. The neural interfaces used in modern ships made their crews vulnerable to quantum-based psychological warfare. But the human fleet relied on natural human reflexes and decision-making. Their minds were ironically more resistant to tampering because they weren't enhanced by quantum technology. As the fleet pushed deeper into Arcturus space, they began transmitting their battle recordings back to Earth. The footage showed antiquated human warships executing maneuvers that should have been impossible, achieving victory against vastly superior forces through a combination of classical physics and human determination. "We're not just fighting with old ships," Captain Chen told her crew after their third successful engagement. "We're fighting with forgotten knowledge. Every tactic that became obsolete when quantum technology arrived, every manual skill that was replaced by neural interfaces, it's all valuable again." The Void Dominion was learning, adapting their strategies to deal with this unexpected threat. But they were learning too slowly. Their entire civilization was built around quantum technology and predictive algorithms. They couldn't comprehend an enemy that chose to fight with inferior weapons and primitive tactics. As the human fleet approached the main battle lines, they received a transmission from the Arcturus Alliance. Their advanced sensors had detected the approaching ships, but like the Void Dominion, they hadn't initially recognized them as an allied fleet. The message was brief, but carried a note of dawning hope. "We don't understand how you're doing this, but please don't stop." The old ships pressed on, their fusion drives burning bright against the darkness. They were humanity's answer to the galaxy's distress call, not with advanced technology, but with the forgotten power of simplicity and the timeless strength of human ingenuity. The Battle of Arcturus Prime. The Arcturus homeworld hung in space like a jewel, its quantum shield generators creating a shimmer of artificial auroras in the upper atmosphere. Beyond it, the Void Dominion's main fleet waited, 100 ships of crystalline beauty and terrible purpose. Between these two forces, humanity's obsolete fleet prepared for what could be their final battle. Captain Chen stood on Endeavor's bridge, watching the tactical display's simple LED indicators track enemy positions. No quantum probability clouds, no AI predictions, just basic sensors showing where the enemy was, not where they might be. "They're finally taking us seriously," Admiral Wei's voice crackled over the radio network. "Their fleet formation is designed to counter classical physics attacks. They're expecting us now." The Void Dominion had adapted their tactics after the human fleet's string of victories. Their ships now projected quantum field distortions specifically calibrated to detect and deflect simple ballistic weapons. They had studied the recordings of their defeats and thought they had solved the puzzle of humanity's primitive warfare. But humanity had been preparing for this moment. Over the weeks of fighting their way to Arcturus Prime, the fleet's engineers and tactical officers had been developing something new, or rather, something very old. "All ships, execute Operation Clockwork," Chen ordered. Across the fleet, crews began implementing a battle plan that would have been familiar to naval commanders from centuries past, but with a crucial twist that only humanity's outdated technology could achieve. The human fleet split into 3 groups, executing a maneuver that any first-year tactical student would recognize: a classic pincer movement with a central thrust. It was so basic, so fundamental, that the Void Dominion's quantum predictive engines assigned it a near-zero probability of success. That was exactly what humanity was counting on. "Launch the resonators," Chen commanded. From the missile tubes of every human ship came devices that looked like simple metal spheres. The Void Dominion's quantum sensors registered them as debris, barely worth tracking. But these spheres contained something that had been gathering dust in Earth's physics archives for centuries: mechanical oscillators. As the spheres spread out between the fleets, they began to vibrate. Not with quantum harmonics or probability waves, but with pure mechanical resonance. The vibrations were synchronized across thousands of devices, creating a web of overlapping mechanical waves that did something the Void Dominion had never considered possible. They created patterns in normal space that interfered with quantum field generation, the quantum equivalent of striking a tuning fork. Chief Rodriguez had explained during the planning phase. "Their shields depend on stable quantum fields. We're going to give them good old-fashioned mechanical noise." The effect was devastating. The Void Dominion's quantum shields, calibrated to defend against energy weapons and probability attacks, began to flicker as the mechanical vibrations disrupted their field coherence. Their sophisticated targeting systems, designed to track quantum signatures, were overwhelmed by the flood of simple physical data. That's when the human fleet struck. Railguns fired their relativistic projectiles. Missile batteries launched warheads that carried no exotic quantum payloads, just precisely calculated kinetic energy and shaped explosive charges. Electronic warfare officers broadcast signals on frequencies that hadn't been used in combat for generations. The Void Dominion fleet, for the first time in their history, faced an enemy that didn't fight on their terms. Their quantum computers couldn't predict the actions of human crews making split-second decisions based on instinct and training. Their advanced weapons couldn't track ships that used gravity assists and inertia instead of quantum drives. "Keep pushing," Chen ordered as Endeavour dove through a gap in the enemy formation. "They can't maintain quantum coherence in their shields while the resonators are active. Every shot counts." The battle turned into something that would have been familiar to ancient naval commanders, a close-quarters brawl where position, timing, and crew skill mattered more than technological superiority. Human gunners tracked targets manually, achieving hit rates that quantum targeting systems deemed statistically impossible. But the Void Dominion wasn't defeated easily. Their ships began to adapt, attempting to compensate for the resonator field by modifying their quantum generators. That's when Admiral Wave unveiled humanity's final surprise. "All ships, execute Einstein Protocol," he commanded. Across the fleet, engineers who had spent weeks studying the fundamental principles of quantum mechanics implemented a theory that dated back to humanity's first understanding of quantum physics: the observer effect. The fleet's primitive sensors, all operating on different frequencies and methods, began actively scanning the Void Dominion ships. The simple act of measurement, multiplied across hundreds of vessels using non-quantum observation methods, forced the enemy's quantum fields to repeatedly collapse into classical states. They built their entire civilization on manipulating quantum uncertainty, we explained as the enemy fleet began to falter. "We're forcing them to deal with classical certainty instead." The Battle of Arcturus Prime lasted for 6 hours. When it ended, the Void Dominion fleet had been reduced to scattered groups of survivors, their quantum advantage neutralized by humanity's masterful use of primitive physics and forgotten military doctrine. As the dust settled, Captain Chen received a transmission from the Arcturus Defense Command. The message was simple but carried the weight of a civilization's gratitude. "You have done what we thought impossible. You have shown us that the path forward sometimes requires remembering the wisdom of the past." The human fleet, battered but victorious, moved into orbit around Arcturus Prime. Their obsolete ships had just changed the course of galactic history, proving that sometimes the oldest solutions were the best ones, especially when wielded by a species that never forgot how to think outside the quantum box. Legacy systems. The aftermath of the Battle of Arcturus Prime revealed something that would reshape humanity's place in the galaxy. Their victory wasn't just a triumph of courage and cleverness, but a demonstration of a fundamental oversight in galactic technological development. In the great halls of the Arcturus Science Academy, Captain Chen stood before a gathering of the galaxy's foremost quantum physicists. Behind her, Chief Rodriguez operated an ancient mechanical computer, its clicking gears and turning wheels drawing looks of fascination from the assembled aliens. Your civilization's advanced beyond classical physics so quickly that you forgot its power, Chen explained, watching the mechanical computer solve complex orbital calculations. You saw quantum technology as the next step in evolution, but you never considered that sometimes a step forward requires understanding what you left behind. The Arcturian scientists had spent weeks studying the human fleet's primitive technology, and their findings were revolutionary. The very simplicity of human systems made them incredibly resilient. While quantum computers could process incredible amounts of data, they were vulnerable to field disruption. A mechanical computer, though slower, would continue functioning even under conditions that would collapse quantum coherence. It's like discovering that a stone axe can cut down a tree just as effectively as a matter disassembler, one Arcturian researcher noted, perhaps more effectively, because the axe doesn't require perfect quantum field alignment to function. Admiral Wei, coordinating with Arcturus Defense Command, helped establish a new doctrine of hybrid warfare. The Arcturians began incorporating classical physics principles into their quantum shield designs, creating defensive systems that could operate in both quantum and classical states. Human engineers worked alongside alien scientists, showing them how to create backup systems that didn't rely on quantum technology. But the most significant discovery came from studying the resonator weapons that had helped win the battle. The simple mechanical vibrations hadn't just disrupted quantum fields, they had revealed a fundamental interaction between classical and quantum physics that the galaxy's advanced civilizations had overlooked in their rush to embrace quantum technology. We call it the legacy effect, Dr. Santos explained during a briefing, her hands moving over the same listening array controls that had received the original distress call. The interaction between mechanical vibrations and quantum fields creates patterns that can't be predicted by either classical or quantum physics alone. It's a whole new field of study. The Void Dominion survivors, interviewed by human intelligence officers, revealed another crucial insight. Their civilization had become so dependent on quantum prediction engines that they had lost the ability to handle unexpected situations. When faced with humanity's unpredictable tactics and primitive technology, their strategic algorithms had fallen into recursive loops, unable to generate effective responses. They built their entire society around the idea that quantum computation could predict and control everything. We noted during a strategic review. They never considered that sometimes the best course of action is the one no computer can predict. Human intuition combined with basic physics. Across the galaxy, other civilizations began to take notice. The quantum arms race that had dominated galactic politics for centuries began to shift. Scientists and military strategists started exploring hybrid technologies that combined quantum and classical principles. Some worlds even began manufacturing primitive mechanical backup systems for their quantum infrastructure. The human fleet, once considered a collection of museum pieces, became the subject of intense study. Alien engineers marveled at the elegance of mechanical systems that could function without quantum field support. Military academies across the galaxy added classical physics and primitive warfare tactics to their curricula. But perhaps the most profound change was in how the galaxy's advanced civilizations viewed humanity. They had expected Earth to eventually develop quantum technology and join the galactic community as just another quantum-based civilization. Instead, Humanity had shown them the value of maintaining connections to more fundamental principles. "Your species has given us something we didn't know we needed," the Arcturian High Commander told Captain Chen during a ceremony honoring the human fleet. "You've reminded us that progress isn't always about moving forward. Sometimes it's about remembering where you came from and understanding that old knowledge isn't obsolete knowledge." As the human fleet prepared for their return journey to Earth, they left behind more than just victory. They had introduced the galaxy to a new way of thinking about technology and warfare, one that recognized that true advancement came not from abandoning the past, but from understanding how to combine the old with the new. The legacy effect would become one of the most studied phenomena in galactic science, leading to breakthroughs in physics that neither quantum nor classical theories alone could have achieved. And it all started because humanity had refused to abandon their obsolete technology, proving that sometimes the best way to advance was to remember the fundamental principles that had brought them to the stars in the first place. Echoes across the stars. 1 year after the Battle of Arcturus Prime, the Great Hall of the Galactic Concordat witnessed something unprecedented: Earth's admission as a full member of the galactic community. But unlike other emerging civilizations, humanity wasn't being admitted for achieving quantum technological parity. They were being recognized for something far more valuable: teaching the galaxy how to think differently. Captain Sarah Chen, now Admiral Chen, stood before the assembled representatives of 100 spacefaring races. Behind her, displayed on massive holographic screens, was a split image. On one side, the advanced quantum ships of the Arcturus Defense Fleet. On the other, the primitive vessels of Earth's Expedition Force. But now those Earth ships were different, hybrid vessels that combined classical and quantum technology in ways that had revolutionized space travel. "The greatest enemy of progress," Chen began, her voice carrying across the silent chamber, "isn't primitive technology or limited resources. It's the assumption that there's only one path forward. Earth didn't save Arcturus by matching the Void Dominion's quantum technology. We saved it by remembering that sometimes the old ways still have value." The changes sparked by humanity's victory had spread far beyond military applications. The legacy effect, the interaction between classical and quantum physics that human engineers had accidentally discovered, had opened up entirely new fields of scientific research. Civilizations that had abandoned mechanical technology centuries ago were rediscovering the elegance and reliability of classical systems. Dr. Elena Santos, who had received that first desperate message from Arcturus, now headed the newly established Institute of Hybrid Physics. Her team of human and alien scientists worked to understand how the fundamental principles of the universe interacted across all technological levels. Their discoveries were reshaping everything from spacecraft design to medical technology. The quantum revolution wasn't a mistake, she explained during a lecture that was transmitted across the galaxy. But believing that it made everything that came before obsolete, that was our species' greatest insight. We never fully abandoned our classical technology, and that preserved knowledge that the rest of the galaxy had lost. The Void Dominion's defeat had triggered a cascade of changes in galactic politics. Other quantum-based civilizations, recognizing their own vulnerabilities, began incorporating human-inspired hybrid technologies into their infrastructure. The age of pure quantum supremacy was over, replaced by a more nuanced understanding of how different technological approaches could complement each other. Chief Rodriguez, still preferring to work with physical engines rather than quantum probability fields, had become something of a celebrity among alien engineers. His workshops on mechanical systems and hybrid integration were attended by beings from across the galaxy. "It's not about going backwards," he would say, hands covered in engine grease. "It's about understanding that every tool has its purpose, even the simple ones." Admiral Wee, speaking before the Earth Defense Council, summarized the transformation. "We thought we needed to catch up to the galaxy's quantum technology. Instead, we showed them that true advancement comes from understanding all levels of technology, from the most basic to the most advanced. Humanity's gift wasn't our primitive ships. It was our ability to see value in what others had dismissed." The human fleet that had saved Arcturus became the template for a new class of warships. These vessels could operate in both quantum and classical modes, switching between advanced technology and basic systems as needed. More importantly, they required crews who understood both, creating a new generation of spacers who were equally comfortable with quantum calculations and mechanical engineering. But perhaps the most profound change was in how the galaxy viewed technological progress. The linear path from primitive to advanced technology was replaced by a more holistic understanding. Civilizations began maintaining multiple technological levels, recognizing that resilience came from diversity rather than pure advancement. The universe doesn't care about our definitions of advanced or primitive, Chen told a graduating class at the Earth Space Academy. It responds to fundamental principles, whether they're expressed through quantum fields or simple mechanics. Our strength comes from understanding all of these principles, not just the ones we consider most advanced. As ships from Earth ventured further into the galaxy, they carried this new philosophy with them. They were no longer seen as a primitive species struggling to catch up, but as teachers of a forgotten truth, that true wisdom lay not in abandoning the old for the new, but in understanding how all knowledge, all technology, all methods could work together. The message that had started it all, a desperate plea from an advanced civilization to a primitive one, now stood as a reminder in the halls of the Galactic Concordat. Below it, inscribed in multiple languages, were words that captured humanity's unique contribution to galactic civilization. Progress is not a linear path to the future, but a circle that remembers its origins. In this remembering, we find not just survival, but wisdom. The stars seemed brighter now, filled not just with the quantum shimmer of advanced technology, but with the steady light of fundamental principles rediscovered. Humanity had found its place among them, not by abandoning its past, but by showing the galaxy that sometimes the best way forward was to remember what had come before.